Did you ever meet this woman? Did you send her money?
Sent her money. I sent her all kinds of Dale Earnhardt things.
Dale Earnhardt things.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. things. She was Dale.
The race car driver.
What?
What is it, my dudes? Today we are going to be watching and analyzing some TCAP. This guy is an all-time favorite, the one and only Lorne Armstrong. Now, I am far from the first person to make this type of video. However, I personally cannot get enough of this show. Cannot get enough of Chris Hansen. Cannot get enough of this type of commentary video. So I decided to throw my hat into the ring too. I also think it is important that even though the show has since been canceled, that we still keep the content in mind so that we can better understand predatory behavior and try to prevent it in the future. And that we continue to put these terrible individuals on blast so people can understand that if you try to harm a child, you will be remembered for all time as the scumbag that you are. So let's just get started, shall we?
Hey, I'm glad you could come.
Girl.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How was your drive?
I love that at the end there. It reminds me of something.
Well, Seymour, I made it, despite your directions.
Ah, Superintendent Chalmers, welcome. I hope you're prepared for an unforgettable luncheon.
Yeah.
How was your drive?
Yeah. Yeah.
Terrible.
Really? How come?
Oh, she was alright.
Oh.
Was that just Lorne's attempt at a really bad joke?
Well, look, we got these new chairs. You have to sit down.
I have to sit down.
Yeah, look. It's a massager
Oh my
chair.
God,
It
look
vibrates
at that.
when you press the buttons.
This fancy new chair strategy is absolutely brilliant. So let's pause here. There seem to be a few different setups the show producers use. In some of the stings, the only role of the decoy is to lure the man into the house, whereupon Chris Hansen immediately accosts him. In this type of sting, however, the decoy chats with the predator for as long as possible before Chris Hansen takes over. I believe the purpose of the decoy lingering is to encourage the predator to incriminate himself as much as possible. As a side note, I was interested as to whether to catch a predator material could be used as evidence for a legal case. Well, after a lengthy scholarly research involving Google and a thread on Reddit's legal advice forum, I feel pretty confident in saying that in at least some, if not most jurisdictions, this content is in fact admissible in court. Now, Chris Hansen's presence is like a ticking time bomb. The predators may not necessarily know that he is Chris Hansen, but they do know that he is an authoritative-looking adult man, perhaps a family member of the girl or a law enforcement officer. The manner in which a predator is willing to open up, and thus confess to his intentions of criminal activity with a minor, is going to be very different with the decoy than with Chris. With the decoy, the predator thinks he is in control of the situation. He thinks the decoy has already accepted all of his depraved thoughts that he wrote in the online chat room, and so he feels confident. He thinks the decoy actually wants the things she requested, like alcohol or condoms, and thus is much more likely to admit that he brought these incriminating pieces of evidence with the intent of using them with the decoy. So the decoy has an extremely difficult and critical role to play in this situation. She has to walk a fine line and maintain the balance between feigning interest in the predator convincingly enough for him to incriminate himself, but then there's also the reality, which is that she most certainly does not want to be touched by the predator. She has to say things that are provocative enough to encourage the predator to respond with something incriminating, something like, "Yes, I bought these condoms for us to use," without actually going so far as to actually put herself in danger. That brings us back to the fancy new chair technique. I believe that introducing the chair is chosen intentionally for several reasons. First, it stops the predator from exploring the house further. The cameraman and Hansen are waiting in the other rooms, and if the predator is out there opening doors willy-nilly, he might come across them. Also, these are staged houses, so it might be obvious that there's not actually a family living there if, say, the predator opens the fridge to find it completely empty. Critically, the chair introduces distance between the predator and the decoy. It's a one-person chair. If the predator is sitting in it, the decoy necessarily is not. In other episodes, we've actually seen the predators pretty much go right in for hugging, or possibly even something worse, as soon as they walk in the door. This stops that. The chair itself is an electronic kind with a footrest. Once somebody is sitting in that chair, it would take them a few seconds to turn off the massage function and to stand up. Thus, once the predator is in that chair, Even if he does decide to go on the attack, there are a few critical seconds available for the decoy to flee the room and for Hansen to swoop in.
Look, oh my god.
Yeah, flip the switches.
Which one is it?
You can use either one of them. It tells you there's one for your butt, there's one for your lower back, and there's one for your upper back.
I just felt my butt. I think.
You can pretty much tell the difference when you press
Holy,
all of them.
yep, that's my
That
butt.
feels so good, right?
I thought you had blonde hair.
Do you like it? I dyed it by myself.
I think it's pretty.
Thank you.
So it's said that the photographs sent over the internet to the predators are not photographs of the actress playing the decoy in the sting house. Honestly, I'm kind of baffled as to how more these guys don't comment on the fact that the photo they were sent and the actual person they're meeting are two completely different people. Like, how is that even possible? Did they not look at the photos sent by the online decoys? Did they look at the photos but not spend much time looking at the face as opposed to other body parts? I don't know, the whole thing seems kind of sus.
It's very pretty.
Where's
Oh
the
my
pizza?
god.
So this part is kind of funny. Lorne never talked about pizza. I believe the decoy mixed him up with a different predator.
I was waiting to eat because I thought you were bringing some.
I don't want to bring you any pizza.
Well, weren't you going to bring me something?
Well, yes, I was. And I did.
Did you bring any condoms?
Yes, I did.
So as discussed earlier, thanks to the decoy, we now have video and audio confirmation that Lorne not only has condoms with him, but he did intend to use them with this girl. This admission makes it much harder for him to later argue that, well, I had condoms, but I just carried them on me. Nope, he said right away that he has the condoms for her, this underage girl.
Where are they?
Out in the truck.
Well, what good are they going to do in the truck if we're in here?
Well, yell at me, why don't you? I haven't had a kiss yet.
Oh, okay. Well, then what did you want to do?
Well, I want a kiss first.
And then what?
Can I have a kiss first?
Well, let's talk first. We just got
Okay.
here.
Here we can see the decoy's job getting really difficult. She wants to goad the predator into admitting that he has the criminal intent to have sex with a minor, but he's just talking about a kiss. Obviously, the decoy is not going to actually kiss Lorne, so she has to decline the kiss while keeping the conversation on the topic of his intentions. The problem is that it's not natural to just list out all of the romantic activities you intend to engage in before starting. People don't tend to sit around saying, well, I'd like to kiss you, then maybe fondle your breasts, eventually going for some fingering, maybe perform oral sex on you or receive oral sex, and then finally engage in vaginal intercourse. Nobody talks like that. That's too weird even for Lorne.
Would you like me to go out in the truck and get my stuff?
No, it's all right.
No? You don't want your thing right now? Present I gave you?
Well, what is it?
Well, I can't tell you. That wouldn't be much of a present if I told you.
Well, you can go get it in a little bit or something, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Are you nervous?
A little bit.
A little bit, not as bad as you thought you would be.
Not as bad, but I still am kind of nervous. I'd rather talk a little bit first and then so I'm more comfortable, you know?
That's cool.
Ugh, it's always super cringe when predators try to relate to the underage girls by mimicking their style of speech.
Good. I'm really glad.
I like seeing you in person.
Yeah, I like seeing you too.
Good.
So.
This is getting hot. How come?
Oh, because press the red button. It's heater too.
You gonna have a seat too?
I like to sit on the edge of chairs.
Do you?
Yeah.
So I believe that this is the point where Chris kind of realizes that the conversation with the decoy has really run its course, and he decides to step in.
Yeah.
Seems pretty comfortable there.
Hi, sir.
How are you?
All right, how are you doing?
What's happening?
Not too much?
Not too much? You a Boston fan?
Yeah, actually, I don't even watch baseball.
Oh.
So if you ever wanted proof that Lorne is absolutely mentally deranged, here we have it. He's from New England, he wears a Boston hat, but he doesn't watch baseball. I have family in that part of the country, and they are absolutely obsessed with their sports teams. It would be pretty unusual for a man from that part of the country to not watch baseball.
But it's a Boston Cap.
It's a Boston Cab, yeah.
Yeah. So what are you up to tonight?
Not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot?
No.
Well, I tell you, for the last several days, you've been up to a lot. You're a pretty prolific chatter there. You want to explain yourself?
Not really. I never really was going to do anything.
You weren't really going to do anything.
No.
So you brought condoms. What else did you bring?
I brought her a bracelet.
A bracelet. And she is how old?
She's supposed to be 13.
Supposed to be 13. And how old are you?
37
37. You have kids?
today. No, unfortunately.
Do you have any kids? No, unfortunately. Now, under most circumstances, that would be a perfectly normal response to that question. However, when you are a sexual predator who just got busted for trying to pick up an underage girl, that's really not the best way to respond to that question.
Yeah.
I've got nieces, though,
Nieces.
that I think the world of.
Yeah, you talk about your nieces in the chat here. And you talk about how you like to spoil the nieces and how you would like to spoil this 13-year-old girl like you spoil your nieces.
Yeah.
Is this the way you spoil young women?
No.
God, can you imagine being Lorne's brother or sister watching this? Possibly learning for the first time that your brother is a pedophile, and on top of that, he compares the targets of his affections to your daughter. That must be one of the worst feelings known to man.
Now, what's your name?
This is what I was afraid of.
What were you afraid of?
Stupid move.
What were you afraid of?
Just because she was a nice girl, and
She was a nice girl. You still haven't told me your name, though.
it's Lorne
Lorne what?
Armstrong.
Armstrong.
Okay, no offense to anybody with the name Lorne, but I've literally never heard of anybody else with that name. It makes him really easy to Google, too.
And where do you live, Lorne?
In Nashville now.
Nashville. What do you do in Nashville?
Actually, I work at a construction company.
And what do you build?
I just started there last week. Right now, building a gym for a church.
A gym for a church. Is that a good job?
Yeah.
Now, besides all this chat here, and we'll go through that in a minute, you also sent a whole bunch of pictures.
A lot of these predators seem to send photographs of their genitals to the chat decoys, which really shows their low level of empathy and just total inability to relate to women. Men are very visual creatures, and for a red-blooded heterosexual male, seeing a woman's private parts would be very exciting indeed, especially if he knew that the woman was sending it directly to him. However, most women's brains don't really work that way. Of course, during sex itself, the genitals matter a great deal, but a photograph of a random dick doesn't really do it for most women. Now, I'm not sure if that's because of some more complex social or emotional reason behind it, or if it's just because male genitalia honestly look pretty funny. But either way, almost no women are going to respond positively to an unsolicited dick pic. I cannot think of a time in my life where I myself, or any woman I know for that matter, was like, "Hey fam, get this. This stranger on the internet sent me pictures of his dick. So cool, huh? I'm definitely looking forward to meeting him in person and having a sexual interaction of any sort whatsoever." Most of the predators just don't seem to grasp this. A lot of these predators seem just kind of low IQ all around, but I think it's also a clear sign of how little empathy they have for girls and women. They don't care if their sexual liaison will mentally or emotionally damage a young girl. They don't really care if she's into it or not, just as long as she accepts it. So they don't bother doing a lick of research into what might actually attract a woman. That thought never enters their minds.
Now, why would you think that's appropriate?
It's not.
It's not. Those are all your pictures, right? Is that all you do in your spare time?
No.
You ever get in trouble like this before?
No, I've never done this before.
You've never done it before. Have you ever met anybody in person who you first met online in a chat room?
No.
This is the first time.
Chris usually makes a big show about not believing the predators when they claim it's their first time trying to meet an underage girl. I honestly can believe it for some of these guys. That they're simply so socially awkward that absolutely nobody, not even the loneliest, most naive, most socially isolated underage girl, would give them the time of day.
So what made you, all of a sudden, for the first time, get online, chat up a 13-year-old girl, and drive up from Nashville to meet her for sex?
Well, I didn't,
Lorne, you send her naked photos, you have an explicit conversation, and you bring condoms. What does that add up to?
I know.
At first, you seem like the Good Samaritan, the protector. Don't tell me your last name. Don't ever tell anyone from the internet your last name, okay? Okay, why? Because there are some real weirdos on here sometimes, and they might try to go looking for you. So don't ever tell them your last name, your address, your phone number, the town you live in, or the school you go to. You're one of those weirdos. I mean, was that some kind of a ruse to gain her trust?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. So how did it go from, hey, be careful, don't give anybody your last name, to, hi, here's some naked pictures of myself and I'm coming over with condoms?
I don't know.
You don't know. Well, you must know something. I mean, help me to understand this.
I don't know
What do you
why
mean you don't know?
I even did.
You don't know why you did it. Well, I think I know why you did it. You did it because you wanted to have sex with a 13-year-old girl.
I don't think that.
No, what?
Chris Hansen really doesn't hold back, does he? God, it's so satisfying to watch him tear into these creeps.
I don't think that.
No, what?
I don't think that was it.
You don't think it was it? Well, why don't you help me out? Why don't you tell me what it was then?
Because I wasted 5 years of my life on the internet talking to girls that gained my trust.
And now we enter the Chris Hansen plays therapist stage of the sting. It doesn't happen every time, but when it does, it's definitely interesting. It's honestly quite impressive how much the predators tend to open up to Chris, especially considering that most of them have no idea who he even is. In a moment, Lorne is about to go on a tangent about his love life in such detail that I wouldn't even necessarily disclose to a new friend. But here's Lorne telling all of this to a stranger. For the predators that don't explicitly ask Chris Hansen whether he's a cop or a family member or anything like that, I do tend to wonder, who do they think Chris Hansen is? Because they spill their guts to him as if Hansen is their therapist. Then again, these are the same men that think there are sexually precocious 13-year-old girls out there just waiting to pounce on their droopy old man bodies. So maybe they also think that therapists just roam the streets in search of random criminals in order to resolve whatever emotional issues they're going through.
And she seemed like somebody I could trust.
You could trust. So when you say you spent 5 years on the internet, what, getting taken advantage of by women? In what way?
In every way.
For instance?
I was up in Washington State. That's when I started going on the internet.
When you lived in Washington State?
I feel bad for Chris Hansen trying to find a cohesive narrative among Lorne's inane ramblings. Lorne doesn't explain his past in a way that would make sense to most people. He just jumps from topic to topic and expects us to fill in the blanks, as if we've known him our whole lives. He drops a, "when I was in Washington State," as if Chris is going to respond, "Ah yes, summer of 1987, back when you were living with your great aunt Ellen in Seattle and working as night shift assistant manager at Pizza Hut. A lot of storms that summer, I remember it like it was yesterday." No, Lorne, nobody has any idea what you're talking about right now.
You started going on the internet, and what happened?
I met a girl, she said her name was Amanda James, and she told me that her daughter was her niece, and that she was watching her niece. Well, she actually had custody of her niece.
What? Okay, let's just try to parse this. Lorne says that he was talking to a woman named Amanda James, who said that her daughter was her niece and that she was watching her niece. But in actuality, she had custody of her niece. Wait a minute. These two statements don't contradict at all. Amanda James could have custody of her niece, which would mean that she is, in fact, watching her. If by having custody, Lorne means that Amanda has formally adopted her niece, then her niece would legally become her adoptive daughter, while simultaneously still being her niece biologically, because the niece's biological mother would be the sibling of the aunt. There's nothing wrong with Amanda's family. So that's either Lorne not understanding how adoption works, or possibly not understanding how human reproduction works. Which is also terrifying, but hey, at least he brought condoms, right?
And then?
3 years later, I moved back to Maine just to be closer to her because she lived in Pennsylvania.
Let's look at a map of the USA while we try to retrace Lorne's geographical adventure across the states. So Lorne moved from Washington State to Maine in order to be closer to Amanda, who was living in Pennsylvania. Admittedly, Maine is closer to Pennsylvania than Washington State is. But how close is it? Oh, only a good 8-hour drive in the best case scenario. Pennsylvania is a big state. Depending on where in Pennsylvania Amanda was living, it could be more like a 12-hour drive. So why would Lorne do this? I see a couple possible scenarios. One is that he's absolutely horrible at geography and somehow thought Maine and Pennsylvania are closer together than they actually are, which would be pretty dire for somebody who is literally from Maine. The other is that he had family, most likely his mom, living in Maine. So the actual reason he moved back to Maine was because he couldn't afford rent in Washington State, and being kind of sort of close to Pennsylvania was just a side effect.
I didn't date anyone, I didn't see anyone because of her.
All right, so what happened?
I got back to Maine and I was talking to her on the phone, and she, my sister wanted to say hi to her, and my sister had been on the internet for a couple of years, and she was able to read people pretty good.
And what happened?
And she got on the phone with her, and she, after she got off the phone, she was only on the phone with her for about 2 minutes, and she got off the phone with her and told me that she wasn't real.
She wasn't real.
She told me she was lying to me, and she'd been lying to me all along.
Let's review. Lorne has been chatting up this internet catfish who calls herself Amanda for some time now. He beseeches his sister, a seasoned web surfer with 2 whole years of internet experience under her belt, to talk to Amanda on the phone. Lorne's sister and Amanda speak for approximately 2 minutes. Upon conclusion of the conversation, Lorne's sister explains to him that Amanda was not, quote-unquote, real, and that Amanda had been, quote-unquote, lying to him all along. I'm really struggling to imagine how that phone conversation went down. What could have possibly transpired in a 2-minute conversation that led Lorne's sister to draw this conclusion? What does it even mean for Amanda to be, quote-unquote, not real? What does Amanda being not real imply for the whole niece/daughter fiasco? Was there even a niece? If not, why did it bother Lorne so much that this Amanda had allegedly adopted her niece? Let's go along with the assumption that Amanda was some sort of catfish, either an internet troll getting a kick out of leading Lorne on, or possibly, as we'll learn shortly, trying to get money and or gifts out of Lorne. How could Lorne's sister determine all of that in just a 2-minute conversation? If Amanda was catfishing, either for money or for lols, why would she immediately confess her treacherous behavior to Lorne's sister? Surely, if Amanda was trying to scam Lorne, she could keep up this ruse of being Amanda for a mere 2-minute conversation with the sister. Maybe Lorne's sister has magic powers, similar to Chris Hansen, where some people just immediately confess their wrongdoings to them when they are confronted. Maybe it's that 2-year internet experience that Lorne's sister has that helped her conduct her investigation of Amanda. Maybe Lorne's sister has seen many a Photoshop in her day, and she could tell from the pixels that Amanda was, in fact, not real. Either way, Lorne doesn't elaborate on this, so the world may never know.
Did you ever meet this woman? Did you send her money?
I sent her money, I sent her all kinds of Dale Earnhardt things.
Dale Earnhardt things.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. things. She was Dale.
The race car driver.
Yeah.
And so because you got taken advantage by a couple of women on the internet, you thought it was okay to take advantage of a 13-year-old girl on the internet.
No, I didn't.
You didn't.
No.
I'm very happy that you talked to me before talking to anyone else, though. This way, you'll be safe.
That's what I meant too, and I don't know how.
You don't know how what?
I don't know how I let it lead to this.
Well, here, let me take you down the road. This is how it went. You started with this, and then it goes to, so this is as thick as a telephone book, by the way, this chat.
Good God, that poor chat decoy. Imagine being stuck chatting with Lorne for that long. That's like Dante's 10th circle of hell. But in the end, it was definitely worth it because that phone book right there was key in getting this scumbag off the streets and in prison where he belongs.
You started chatting with her when? Last month? So you've been chatting with this young woman for a month. And so it starts with you being the protective older brother type. And we flip through dozens and dozens of pages here. And ultimately, it builds into a very sexually explicit conversation, right? I wish I were sticking it in you right now. You tell her to delete her archives after we stop talking again, okay? Why did you want her to delete her archives? Help me out.
I
You
didn't
didn't want to get in trouble.
I didn't want her to get in trouble by her parents.
I mean, this goes on and on and on. Do you think naughty thoughts about me before you go to sleep? You talk about getting married to her. Getting married, she's 13. Huh?
And then when she was 18.
Whoa. What do you mean she was 18?
So I meant when she was 18.
Well, you were going to marry her when she turned 18. But you're just going to have sex with her from the ages of 13 to 18 then.
Many of the predators tell the chat decoys that they would like to marry them. There could be multiple reasons for this. In some cases, like the predator with the marriage contract, I believe that the marriage proposal is a legal strategy. The age of majority and thus of legal ability to consent to sexual intercourse in most US states is either 16 or 18. However, in many states, a child under 16 can get married, usually requiring a parental approval. Some states set this marriageable age as low as 12 in the case of Massachusetts. Other states have no limit on how young a child can get married. And this isn't just a case of there being a wacky law on the books that doesn't have bearing in real life. Child marriages actually do happen in the USA with alarming frequency, most often in poorer and more rural areas. Now, I don't mean to imply that the USA is on some Taliban tier levels of promoting child marriage. Socially, marrying a child is generally viewed negatively anywhere in the USA. But that said, it still happens way more than it should. Kind of like people getting a face tattoo. You'd think the rate would be 0, but unfortunately, it is not. As a side note, the Googling I had to do to find this data is probably putting me on some kind of watch list. However, I don't think that Lorne's intent with the marriage line was simply about making statutory rape no longer statutory rape due to a perverse legal loophole. I see a few possibilities here. The first is simply that Lorne, crazed with lust and drunk on power, genuinely liked the idea of staying with this girl forever. Of course, we know there's zero chance of that happening, but perhaps by the same faulty reasoning that leads a predator to think that a 13-year-old would desire him in the first place, a predator may also erroneously believe that he could actually persuade his victim's parents to sign over their underage daughter's hand in marriage. Another possibility is that the marriage line was part of his sexual fantasy. I don't want to dwell on the nature of a predator's sexual fantasies any longer than absolutely necessary, so let's just say it could be a fetish and leave it at that. However, what I believe is the most likely option, and indeed the most grotesque option, is that the predators talk up marriage as a part of their grooming strategy. They think all young girls dream of the big day with the poofy white dress and wedding bells ringing, and they try to create an image of something that they think will appeal to the target. In my opinion, it does seem like an odd tack to take for a girl of that age. I can't speak for all girls, but I know that when I was that age, my friends and I didn't really like the idea of marriage at all. It felt like something in the distant future, like paying taxes or repairing a leaky roof. The idea of actually getting married myself didn't really seem real to me at that age. It was more of a thing that happens to other people type of scenario. However, as I said, I can't speak for all girls. I know in some more conservative or more religious parts of the country, girls are pretty much primed to be wife material and basically raised to think that getting married should be their priority in life. So I suppose there might be some 13-year-olds who do daydream about getting married. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter to a predator what his prey wants. The predator is just concerned with doing the bare minimum to convince the girl to go to bed with him. They can cast a feeler out by talking about marriage, and if it goes well, continue grooming the girl on that topic. If it doesn't go well, they can just play it off as a joke and move on. Either way, anytime a predator is found talking about marriage to who he thinks is a young girl, it's always one of the more stomach-turning and disturbing parts of the sting.
Are you excited about me or my penis? Did you bring anything else with you tonight?
Like what?
Like anything?
Nope.
Food, alcohol?
Nope.
So just the bracelet and the condoms? Nothing else?
Chris is really grilling the predator as to whether or not he brought anything else with him. It almost sounds like he's just making fun of the woefully inadequate date materials that Lorne has prepared. Literally just a $5 necklace and some condoms. But I suspect he also wants to see if he can get Lorne to confess to any additional crimes while still on camera. Like maybe bringing some weed or something like that.
What do you think ought to happen to you? Oh, here's a good one. Is Miss Vagina thinking about Mr. Penis? What is she thinking?
People really like to make fun of this line, and I can understand why. It is funny. But in a way, this line is like a news headline from North Korea. It's so absurd, yet we the viewer know that it was expressed in complete sincerity, thus adding to the comedic effect. However, both the Mr. Penis and Ms. Vagina line, as well as the North Korean threats to turn the Yankee imperialist bastards into a sea of flames, actually aren't funny at all when you think about them for a moment. They're actually deeply disturbing in their implications. The Mr. Penis and Ms. Vagina talk is disturbing because it shows that Lorne may be a more seasoned predator than the viewer might first think. He knows how to code switch into a tone of voice that seems more age-appropriate, while talking about content that is definitively not appropriate. It's pretty common to see inanimate objects that are anthropomorphized for children's entertainment content. This helps the child familiarize him or herself with the object and feel more comfortable around it. This tactic of using an anthropomorphized character to familiarize children with something intended for adults has a precedent in the Joe Camel character that used to appear in advertisements for cigarettes. The makers of Camel cigarettes insisted that they did not intend for Joe Camel to appeal to children. However, research showed that young children were just as familiar with Joe Camel and his connection to cigarettes as they were with Mickey Mouse. Furthermore, it was found that Camel were the most popular cigarette brand among underage smokers. A lawsuit against the makers of the cigarettes was ultimately settled outside of court, and the Joe Camel cartoon ceased to be used in the marketing of Camel cigarettes. So even if the cigarette company won't admit it, or even if they really didn't intend for it. The fact is that anthropomorphizing a cigarette smoker into a child-friendly concept, a cartoon camel in this instance, was in practice extremely effective in both introducing children to smoking and also making them like smoking more. The Mr. Penis and Ms. Vagina euphemism bears a similarity to Joe Camel. By naming the genitals after humans, those body parts are anthropomorphized and made to sound more childish and cute. It is extremely disturbing that a predator would use this kind of nickname that would likely appeal much more to a child than to a woman of his own age.
What's up with that? What do you think ought to happen to you? Help me out.
I think I should go to counseling to get off the internet.
You should go to counseling and get off the internet. Did you ever say to yourself, hey man, I got a problem here?
No, because I never thought I did.
You never thought you did. Does this incident make you think that perhaps you have a problem? What are you going to do about it?
I can do some things I can't do that. Oh my God.
Well, do you ever watch television much? You ever watch a program called Dateline NBC?
I sometimes wonder if Chris is ever sad when people say they've never heard of his show. Then again, these aren't exactly the most desirable guys to have as your fans.
Well, there's something I got to tell you.
Say the line!
I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC. We're doing a story on 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 We're doing a story on Now you're free to walk out of this house right now. But if there's anything else you want to say, now would be the time to say it.
For the arrest part of the video, we'll be switching to a different clip because it has a much better camera angle.
Sheriff's office, down! Get down! On the ground, on the ground!
Hey, put it back, Mark.
I find the arrest scenes extremely interesting because you can see how in different parts of the country, police behavior is totally different. Generally, I'm not a big fan of excessive police brutality when it's not necessary. I understand that there are some predators that try to flee, and I can totally understand a police reaction in that kind of situation. But I'm not talking about that kind of situation here. I'm talking about when you've got a predator like Lorne Armstrong, who is just completely defeated and totally submissive by the time Chris Hansen is done with him. He's not likely to do any crazy moves at this point. It feels kinda over the top to have the cops shouting at him like they think they're the FBI or something. Now, I didn't go to a police academy or anything, so maybe they have a good reason to do this. But I do find it interesting to note that sometimes the cops in other jurisdictions are super chill. In some of the stings that take place in different states, the cops just kinda casually walk up and arrest the predator by simply handcuffing him. The contrast really makes it feel like this level of drama from the police is just not really necessary. On the one hand, I do find it extremely satisfying to watch these horrible wastes of oxygen get their comeuppance. On the other hand, I feel like supporting a principle, like police should not use excessive force when it's not necessary, it's a bit like supporting free speech. You have to support free speech of even people you hate and completely disagree with, otherwise you're not actually supporting free speech. I feel the same way about people who suggest that pedophiles getting murdered in prison is a good outcome. On a primal level, I understand that emotional reaction, because I have the same one too. But if we think it through, it doesn't really make sense to essentially leave the penalty for a certain crime to be decided by other criminals rather than a court of law. If we think that these predators should be put to death, then we should just be classifying their crimes as eligible for the death penalty. The purpose of a prison is not to let the worst members of society knock each other out like it's a big game of Super Smash Bros. It's to rehabilitate people. Theoretically, anyway. Well, this tangent is getting a little long, so I'll stop here for now. So that's it for the case of Lorne Armstrong. If you have watched this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I would love to hear your thoughts on this case, and I'm also open to suggestions for other predators to comment on. I have a bunch of mine that I'm working on already. Alright then, I'm out.